Hey guys. Tonight, we slip into the quiet dawn of an ancient Greek world, where you're standing on a rocky hill, the air sharp with olive and dust, watching priests in flowing robes kindle a fire for Apollo, the god of light and prophecy. The flames flicker, barely waking the sleepy valley below. You can almost feel the cool stone under your feet as the first rays of sunlight hit the temple's cracked columns. This isn't some grand Parthenon moment, sorry. No golden statues or epic battles here. Just a small, forgotten shrine, where daily rituals unfold with a rhythm so steady, it might just lull you to sleep. But fair warning, you probably won't survive this morning without yawning at least once. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop a comment with your city and local time. It's always cool to know where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in this tiny temple, tucked away in a corner of Delphi that tourists never bother with. It's not the famous oracle's haunt. This is Apollo's lesser known spot, where priests start their day before the roosters even think about crowing. You're watching them shuffle in, bleary eyed, carrying bundles of laurel branches. They're not exactly morning people, these priests. One guy's muttering about how Apollo's sacred fire always takes 3 tries to light properly. Guess even divine flames have bad days. The ritual's simple but strict. They sweep the temple floor, sprinkle water from a nearby spring, and arrange the laurel in precise patterns. Why laurel? It's Apollo's favorite plant, tied to his myth of chasing Daphne, who turned into a laurel tree to escape his enthusiasm. Mainstream history tells us these dawn rites were standard across Apollo's temples by the 6th century BCE, meant to honor his role as the sun's shepherd. But here's the odd bit: some priests, when no one's looking, slip a single myrtle leaf into the laurel pile. Myrtle's sacred to Aphrodite, not Apollo. Tossing it in is like sneaking pineapple onto a purist's pizza. Technically forbidden, but they do it anyway. Why? No one's sure. Historians still argue whether it was a quiet rebellion against Apollo's rigid rules, or just a local quirk that stuck. Maybe they thought Aphrodite's charm could sweeten Apollo's mood. You're watching them now. These priests moving in slow, deliberate steps, their white robes catching the faint glow of the fire. The air smells like burnt herbs and earth, and you're starting to feel the weight of the morning's stillness. You're not here to judge their sneaky myrtle trick. You're just a shadow in the corner, soaking in the rhythm of their work. Picture yourself kneeling by the altar, close enough to hear the crackle of the fire. The priests chant softly, a low hum that feels like it's vibrating through the stone. It's not loud or dramatic. No Hollywood-style booming hymns. Just a steady drone. Like a lullaby for a god who's probably still sipping nectar on Olympus. You notice one priest, younger than the rest, fumbling with the water jug. He spills a bit, and the older priest next to him rolls his eyes. You can almost hear him thinking, "Kid, you had one job." It's a human moment. Proof these rituals weren't always flawless. The young priest recovers, though, and soon they're all circling the altar, offering barley grains to the flames. The smoke curls upward, carrying their prayers to Apollo, or at least, that's the idea. You're starting to get why this temple feels so peaceful. It's not just the routine. It's the way everything slows down here. The priests aren't rushing. They're not trying to impress anyone. They're just doing the thing. You're tempted behind her words. You're tempted to lie back on the cool stone and close your eyes, letting the chants wash over you. But there's something else in the air. A faint whisper of defiance. You glance at the pile of laurel again, spotting that single myrtle leaf, half hidden. It's a tiny act, but it feels like a secret you're now in on. What else are these priests hiding? You're about to find out as you step deeper into the temple's shadows, where the rules of Apollo's worship start to bend. You're still in the dim, smoky heart of Apollo's forgotten temple. The dawn rituals are fading as the priests shuffle out, their laurel and myrtle offerings smouldering on the altar. You linger, your bare feet brushing the cool stone floor, and notice something odd, a small niche in the wall, half hidden by a tattered curtain. Curiosity pulls you closer. You peek inside and find a jumble of offerings that don't belong. A clay figurine of a bull, a bundle of dried figs, even a chipped obsidian knife. These aren't Apollo's usual gifts of barley or wine. No, these are forbidden. The kind of things you'd offer to older, earthier gods, like Demeter, or even Hecate. You're standing there, heart thumping, wondering who's been sneaking these into Apollo's sacred space. One thing's clear, you wouldn't last a day in this temple without getting caught for snooping. The air feels heavier now, like the stones themselves are holding their breath. You're not alone. There's a faint rustle behind you, and you turn, just in time to see a shadow slip out the side door. You follow, careful not to knock over a stray oil lamp. Outside, the morning sun is climbing, but the temple's courtyard is still cloaked in shade. You spot a young woman, maybe a priestess in training, tucking something under her cloak. It's another forbidden offering, a small loaf of bread studded with poppy seeds. Bread's fine for Apollo, but poppy seeds, that's a nod to Hypnos, the god of sleep, and definitely not on Apollo's approved list. Historical records from the 5th century BCE confirms Apollo's temples had strict rules about offerings. Only grains, wine, or animals tied to his myths were allowed. Anything else was blasphemy, or at least a serious faux pas. But here's the fringe tidbit. Some scholars whisper about shadow cults in Apollo's temples, small groups who mixed his worship with older, chthonic deities. They'd sneak in offerings like these, hoping to hedge their bets with gods who ruled the earth or dreams. Historians still argue whether these were organized rebellions or just desperate locals trying to cover all divine bases. You're watching this woman now, her hands trembling as she hides the bread in a crevice near the temple's outer wall. She glances around, and you duck behind a column, feeling like you're in a slow motion spy movie. Her face is tense, but there's a glint of defiance in her eyes. She knows she's breaking the rules, and she doesn't care. You creep closer, the scent of olive trees mixing with the faint tang of the bread. You're starting to piece it together. This isn't just one person's rebellion. The niche you found was stuffed with offerings, some old and crumbling. This has been going on for a while. You imagine a network of worshippers, maybe farmers, maybe women excluded from the main rituals, sneaking here at odd hours to leave their gifts. It's not loud defiance. No torches, no protests. It's quiet, like a whisper. You can only hear if you're really paying attention. You're tempted to reach out and touch the bread, but you hesitate. What if Apollo's watching? Or worse, what if Hypnos is? And you fall asleep right here. You step back, blending into the courtyard's shadows. The woman's gone now, her cloak just a flicker in the distance. You're left with the hum of the temple, the distant clink of a priest's tools, and the weight of this secret. Those forbidden offerings feel like a puzzle, each piece a story of someone who dared to bend the rules. You glance back at the niche, half expecting it to vanish like a dream. But it's still there, a crack in Apollo's perfect order. You're not sure what's next, but you feel the pull to follow this thread of quiet rebellion deeper into the temple's hidden corners. You're still in the temple's courtyard. The morning sun now warms the stones beneath your feet, but you can't shake the chill from those forbidden offerings. Hidden in the niche, you wander toward the oracle's chamber, a small, dimly lit room carved into the hillside, where the air smells of damp earth and incense. You're not supposed to be here. Nobody is, unless they've got a question for Apollo and a hefty offering to match. But you slip inside, drawn by a faint murmur. It's the oracle herself, alone, pacing in her flowing robes, muttering something that doesn't sound like the grand prophecies she's famous for. You're catching her in a rare moment of doubt. And trust me, you wouldn't survive a day in her shoes. Second, guessing a god's cryptic messages. The oracle, a woman with grey, streaked hair and eyes like she's seen too many futures, is talking to herself. Was it 3 crows? Or 4? She whispers, rubbing her temples. You're crouched behind a stone bench, barely breathing as she paces. Oracles in Apollo's temples, like the famous one at Delphi, were central to Greek life by the 7th century BCE, acting as divine mouthpieces for kings and farmers alike. Their visions shaped wars and marriages. But here's the thing, they weren't always clear. She's muttering about a vision from last night. Something about a ship sinking, or maybe it was a flock of birds. You can feel her frustration. It's like trying to remember a dream that keeps slipping away. Here's the odd tidbit. Some ancient texts hint that oracles occasionally faked their trances, chewing laurel leaves to look convincingly out of it. Not this one, though. She's too rattled to be faking. Historians still argue whether oracles genuinely believed their visions or were just master improvisers under pressure. You're watching her now, scribbling on a clay tablet, then scratching it out with a grimace. It's oddly comforting to see her so human, like she's cramming for a test she can't possibly pass. You're tempted to cough, just to see if she'd notice. But you stay quiet, soaking in the scene. She stops pacing and sits on the bench. Right above you, you can smell the faint sweetness of incense burning nearby, mixed with the musty scent of the cave, like chamber. She's muttering again. Something about Apollo being too vague this time. You stifle a chuckle. Imagine calling a god out for bad communication skills. It's a bold move, but she's not shouting it to the world, just whispering it to the shadows. You're starting to get why this temple feels so alive with secrets. First, the forbidden offerings, now an oracle doubting her own divine fee signal. You wonder if she's ever slipped up in public, blurting out something like, "Sorry, Apollo's line is breaking up." As you watch, she pulls a small vial from her robe and sprinkles water on the floor. A cleansing ritual, maybe, to clear her mind. The droplets catch the light, and for a moment, the room feels softer, like the tension's easing. You're lulled by the rhythm of her movements, the way she sways as she chants a low, repetitive prayer. It's not the grand performance you'd expect from an oracle, just a quiet, private moment. You're starting to drift, the incense and her voice wrapping around you like a blanket. But then, she says something that snaps you awake. What if the god himself is unsure? You freeze. That's not just doubt. That's heresy. You're in deep now. And the chamber feels smaller, like the walls are listening as you lean closer to hear what she'll say next. You're still crouched in the oracle's chamber, the air thick with incense and the weight of her whispered doubts. But now you're slipping out, heart pounding, as her words about Apollo's uncertainty echo in your mind. You move through the temple's shadowed corridors, following a faint clatter toward the back, where the priest's quarters hide. You're not supposed to be here either. Honestly, you're racking up trespassing violations, like they're going out of style. You wouldn't last a day sneaking around like this without getting caught. But then you see him. A priest. Older. Beard like a philosopher. Eyes that glint with something reckless. He's not sweeping floors. He's not lighting fires. He's defying Apollo himself. And you're about to find out how. You duck behind a cracked column. As he kneels by a small altar. Not the grand, polished one for Apollo, but a rough, makeshift thing tucked in a forgotten corner. He's muttering. Not in reverent chants, but in sharp, clipped tones. Like he's arguing with someone invisible. He offers a handful of wheat. Standard stuff. Then he adds a single black feather. That isn't Apollo's vibe at all. That's more like something you'd offer to the Furies. The underworld's enforcers of vengeance. Historical records from the 6th century BCE say Apollo's priests live by strict codes. Breaking them could mean exile, or worse. This man's playing with fire, and not the sacred kind. Here's the weird bit, some ancient texts hint that, in remote temples, a few priests secretly honored older deities. The Furies, even the Titans, as a way to balance out Apollo's sunny perfectionism. Was it rebellion? Or just survival? Historians still argue. But right now, you're watching him live it. His hands are steady. His jaw is tight. He glances around, and you hold your breath, praying your sandal doesn't squeak. He doesn't see you, but you see the feather vanish into the flame, sending up a thin, dark wisp of smoke. It's a small act, but in this quiet temple, it feels like a shout. You're starting to feel the weight of all these secrets. The myrtle leaf from the dawn rituals, the forbidden offerings in the niche, the oracle's doubts, and now this rogue priest with a feather in the fire. It's like this temple's built on a foundation of whispers. You imagine him sneaking here at odd hours, maybe meeting others who share his quiet defiance. You're tempted to step out and ask him, why? Why risk Apollo's wrath for a single feather? But you stay hidden, your back pressed against the cool stone. The priest stands, dusts off his robe, and you catch a faint smirk, like he's just pulled off a heist. You can't help but grin a little yourself. There's something oddly satisfying about his nerve. He moves toward the corridor's end, and you follow, your steps light, your curiosity louder. The air smells of wax and old wood. The faint hum of the temple's chants drifts in from beyond. It lulls you, but his defiance keeps you sharp. He stops at a small door, glances back once more, and slips inside. You're left in the hallway, the feather's smoke still lingering in your mind. You don't know where this path leads, but you feel the pull to keep going, to see what other cracks in Apollo's order are waiting to be found. The The temple's secrets are piling up, and you're in too deep to turn back now. You're lingering in the dim corridor where the rogue priest vanished, the faint smell of his rebellious feather offering still curling in your nose like smoke that won't quite lift. You don't dare follow him through that door. Not yet. Instead, you turn toward a crumbling archway you hadn't noticed before, half swallowed by vines. It leads to a forgotten shrine, tucked behind the main temple, like a secret the stone doesn't want to remember. The air here is cooler, damp, like the earth itself is breathing. You step inside, your sandals crunching on broken tiles, and find yourself in a small, circular room. Its walls are etched with faded carvings, laurel leaves, lyres, half-erased figures caught between music and myth. This isn't Apollo's main stage. This is a relic, a shadow, a place where old rituals cling like dust to the corners. You're poking around where you absolutely shouldn't be. Let's be honest. You wouldn't survive a day in this temple without tripping over some sacred boundary you didn't even know existed. The shrine's centerpiece is a low altar, chipped and mossy, its shallow basin dry, as if it hasn't tasted an offering in centuries. You kneel, studying the carvings, and then, there it is, a spiral, tiny, out of place. Not Apollo's golden sun or his elegant lyre. This is something older, earthier. Maybe Gaia, maybe something forgotten, before the Olympians rewrote the divine cast list. Historical records from the 7th century BCE note that Apollo's temples often absorbed older sacred sites, layering his worship over what came before. This feels like one of those places, a ghost of a ritual space no one talks about anymore. You run your fingers over the spiral, half expecting it to hum with some buried power. But no, just cold stone, quiet, still. Here's the fringe tidbit. Some archaeologists believe shrines like this one were used for rituals. Strange blends of Apollo's order with the chaos of older, wilder deities. Historians still argue, was this deliberate syncretism? Or just villagers being sloppy with their gods? You're noticing more clues now. Scattered acorns around the altar. Not your usual Apollo-approved offering. More like a forest god's snack. Or a whispered prayer, left by someone hoping the old powers still listen. You imagine her, a farmer's wife, maybe, slipping in at dusk, palming acorns from her apron, leaving them in silence for a goddess whose name the priests no longer say aloud. You're starting to feel it. The pull of this place. Its stillness wrapping around you like a soft blanket. The carvings tell stories you can only guess at. Figures dancing, or maybe fighting, their faces worn down to elegant ghosts. Then you see it, a clay shard, half buried in dust. You pick it up. Etched on it, a single name, Eileithia, the goddess of childbirth. Not exactly Apollo's best friend. Another secret, like the myrtle leaf, the forbidden loaf, the feather. This temple's starting to feel less like a house of divine order and more like a museum of quiet rule. Breaking. You think about pocketing the shard. A little souvenir. But something stops you. Messing with sacred things in a room this forgotten feels like asking for a lightning bolt. Or at least a very bad dream. The air shifts. A faint breeze threaded with pine moves through the shrine. You sit, back against the altar, eyes tracing the carvings like old stories carved into fog. You can almost see this place alive again. Offerings, chants, bare feet and whispered prayers. Before Apollo's clean, cut theology swept in and swept all this away. You're drifting now, the day's secrets settling over you like dusk. But then, you hear it, a faint scrape, a footstep, from the archway. Your heart skips. Someone's coming, or something's stirring. And you're about to find out what else this forgotten shrine is hiding. You're still in the forgotten shrine, heart thudding from that faint scrape at the archway. The air is thick. Pine, dust, the musty scent of old stone and secrets long buried. You scramble to your feet, the shard of Eileithyia still warm in your palm, and peer through the vines draping the entrance. Moonlight spills in, casting jagged shadows that twitch with every breath of wind. That's when you see them. 3 figures, hooded, fast, moving, silent, but not stealthy enough. Not priests. Their movements are too sharp, too practiced in secrecy. This isn't reverence. It's intent. You duck behind the altar again, your breath shallow. Your knees sinking into cold, cracked tiles. They enter. A woman older, her braid coiled like a snake down her back. 2 men follow, faces half, shrouded, carrying woven baskets that don't look ceremonial. You catch glimpses inside bones, herbs, a vial of something dark, thick as ink. This is no Apollo-sanctioned ritual. They kneel in the center of the shrine. No genuflection, no prayers to the sun. Just business. The woman murmurs instructions, voice low and rough. They arrange the bones into a circle, deliberate, like building a gateway. The chants start. Not the soaring melodies of Apollo's temple choir, but something deeper. Rougher. Low. Throated syllables that rumble like distant thunder. It doesn't feel like prayer. It feels like summoning. Historical accounts from the 6th century BCE hint at these hidden rites. Worship of chthonic gods under the very noses of Olympian priests. Hecate, Persephone, even primordial forces with no names left to speak aloud. These rites were banned, prosecuted, erased. But clearly, the shrine remembers. They light a fire. It's small, but the shadows it casts crawl high up the walls. You're close enough to smell it. Thyme, burnt leaves, and something bitter, like ash soaked in wine. The woman uncorks the vial and pours it in. The flames flash green, just for a moment, but it's enough to jolt the breath from your chest. Green fire. Even in a temple full of metaphors, that's no poetic flourish. It's a signal. A dare. Some fringe scholars believe animal bones were used to anchor rituals like these. Physical weights to pull ancient deities into the world of men. Whether that's desperate devotion or divine mutiny depends on who's writing the history. You don't move. Can't. Your legs have locked. Your body's screaming, but the chant, it's softening. Growing slow, like a lullaby sung to the earth itself. You feel your eyelids flutter. Just for a second. The rhythm is that strong. A rope pulling your thoughts downward, deeper. You think of the myrtle leaf at dawn, the feather in flame, the doubting oracle. Now bones and green fire. Each act a whisper, a crack in Apollo's perfect surface. And then, you hear a phrase. One line, clear as crystal, rise. Old ones, from shadow. Chills race down your arms. But still, you're impressed. This is a rebellion, quiet as moss, bold as thunder. The woman pauses. Her head turns. Eyes flick toward your altar. You freeze, stone still. Is she looking at you? You can't tell. But then, she turns back. Finishes the rite. They scatter the ashes into the fire, snuff the flame, and slip out into the night like fog evaporating in moonlight. Gone. You're alone again, but not really. The air is heavier, the silence thicker, and the smoke still curls in the green, tinged dark. You want to chase them. Ask them why. Where? Who they really serve. But your legs won't move, and the chant lingers, tangled in your thoughts, pulling you under like a tide. You lean back against the altar, exhausted, enchanted, and wonder how many more forbidden rites still live. Under this moonlit veil Apollo once claimed as his own. You're still in the forgotten shrine. The green, tinged smoke of that secret rite, curling into the night like breath, lost in wind. The last echoes of those chants cling to your mind. A rhythm you can't shake. You step back into the corridor. The moonlight follows. The temple feels quieter now, too quiet, as if the walls are holding their breath. A flicker of light draws your eye. A narrow room just off the main altar, where a single oil lamp burns low, its flame quivering like it knows it's not supposed to be alone. You slip inside. The air is thick with wax and parchment. A wooden table sits under the lamp, strewn with scrolls in soft disarray. Some are half unrolled, their edges curled, as if they'd been read and abandoned mid. You hesitate. You're not supposed to be here. You're definitely not supposed to touch anything. But you do. Because honestly, you wouldn't survive a day in this temple without poking your nose where it doesn't belong. You gently unroll a scroll. The papyrus is brittle, the ink faded like an old argument. You scan the text. Offer only barley at dawn. No myrtle in my presence. Sing hymns in 7 tones. Clear, commanding. Then another scroll. Barley and figs at dusk. Myrtle honors my mother. Sing in 5 tones, lest chaos follow. You blink. It's like divine whiplash. Contradiction upon contradiction. as if you've stumbled into a god's personal brainstorming session. Apollo's commands aren't just layered, they're tangled. Historical accounts from the 5th century BCE say the same oracles contradicted each other. Priests debated endlessly, some even forming secret councils, just to interpret what Apollo might really mean. You start flipping through scroll after scroll. One says daily offerings are required. Another insists weekly is more holy. One forbids women from leading rites. Another makes them essential. You begin to understand. This isn't just divine confusion. It's the architecture of power. A god of clarity wrapped in mystery. You spot a margin note. Scribbled in hasty, he says both. But which is true? You grin. A priest's silent scream, captured in ink. You can almost hear him muttering. Make up your mind, Apollo, while fumbling with incense and trying not to panic. Some scrolls are neater, revised, copied over. Others are messier, as if the priest couldn't decide whether to obey or rebel. Here's the fringe theory. Some say the priests themselves edited the oracles, softened them, sharpened them, bent them into something manageable. Not blasphemy, just divine diplomacy. Or maybe quiet revolt. You're tempted to write your own note in the margin. Buddy. But you don't. Even you know better than to graffiti a god's command, no matter how absurd. The lamp flickers. The walls feel like they're listening. You imagine priests gathered here centuries ago, scrolls spread out, arguments thick in the air, trying to reconcile a god who demands everything and changes the rules daily. The contradictions aren't mistakes. They're patterns. Shadows of mortal desperation pressed into sacred words. You sit back. The scrolls rustle softly as they settle. You remember the myrtle leaf, the forbidden offerings, the green fire, the whispering rites. Maybe Apollo doesn't test through fire and punishment. Maybe he tests through confusion. To see who bends, who breaks, who rewrites the rules in secret ink. You hear a faint chant from the main altar, a thread of normalcy. A reminder of order, even if it's built on contradiction. The lamp's nearly out. The shadows stretch long now, curling around your ankles. You rise. You leave the room. The confusion clings to you like incense. Faint and persistent. A dream you haven't quite woken from. You slip out of the scroll-strewn room. Apollo's contradictions still buzzing behind your eyes when a faint rustle draws you farther toward the temple's edge. There, under the open sky, you step into a sacred grove. Ancient olive trees twist in the moonlight, their silvered leaves whispering secrets to one another. The air is crisp, laced with resin and damp earth, and the silence here feels watched. You're not supposed to be in this place. Groves are for priests, places of ritual, not refuge. One wrong step, and the gods might notice. But the trees seem to lean in, beckoning. Their branches creak like old voices, murmuring tales from a time before even Apollo's name was carved in stone. You pause beneath a gnarled trunk. Its bark is etched with symbols. Not Apollo's son, not his lyre. One is a crescent moon, another is older, sharper. You run your fingers across it, half expecting heat. But it's just dry wood and age. Historical records from the 6th century BCE describe groves like these as liminal zones between mortal and divine, truth and trickery. They were places of offering, yes, but also of omission. Not everything spoken in a grove was meant for gods. You start to feel it too. Not danger. Exactly. But something layered beneath the leaves. A whisper of someone pretending to be divine. Here's the odd detail. Some texts speak of false prophets. Men who slipped into sacred spaces, cloaked in borrowed holiness, selling visions for olives and coin. Historians still debate. Were they liars? Or believers who simply drowned in their own delusion? You kneel. At the base of the tree lies a small pile of stones, too neat to be chance. And tucked beneath, a crude clay figure. A man with a lyre. But where his legs should be, a serpent's tail coils. You blink. That's not Apollo. It's not even close. It's a trickster. Maybe a regional cult figure. Maybe a warning. You almost laugh. Someone left this here. To mock the god, to invite another. Or to remember what was nearly forgotten. You don't touch it. You almost do. But what if it's not just clay? What if it's not just bad art? The grove presses closer. The leaves hiss gently overhead, blending with the distant hum of temple chants. A sound like memory. You picture it now. An imposter in a stolen robe, stepping through these trees with confident lies and empty promises. Donnet, he might have said. And Apollo will heal your child, or curse your rival, or bless your field. You chuckle. Scams, it seems, age better than temples. You take another step. The trees grow thicker, the moonlight thins, the grove exhales, and you hear it a whisper, not wind, a voice. He was no god. You freeze. The words cut straight through the quiet, low and unhurried, as if spoken beside your ear. You spin. No one. The whisper lingers. Your skin prickles. That voice. It ties to everything, the forbidden rites, the feather, the fire, the broken oracle. This grove isn't just sacred. It's witness. You keep walking. Carefully. The trees shift like a closing jaw, but you move with the rhythm now. Something was hidden here. A truth. A trespass. A name that shouldn't be spoken under the sun. And this grove remembers. You're still in the sacred grove. The whispered warning. He was no god. Dissolves into the rustle of olive leaves as you back away from the serpent. Tailed figure. Moonlight. Barely filters through the canopy now. The shadows grow denser, the air thick with the breath of old trees and damp soil. You're drawn to a low stone wall at the grove's edge. It's moss, covered stones holding something forgotten. At its base, a pile of broken pottery, shards like scattered teeth, and nestled among them, a cracked clay tablet. You kneel. Brush dirt from its surface. The script is frantic, tight and slanted, scratched like someone wrote it in a storm. This isn't a prayer. It's a warning. Words flicker through the dust. Flood. Betrayal. Hidden star. You shouldn't be reading this. You really shouldn't be holding this. But here you are, again, with your grubby mortal hands, all over divine property. You wouldn't survive a single day in this temple without someone catching you red-handed in the God's private library of mistakes, because that's what this is. Not glory, not prophecy, but prophecy gone wrong. Historical records from the 6th century BCE speak of prophecies that vanished. Visions deemed too dangerous to survive. Predictions of gods faltering, of mortals rising, of order collapsing. And here they are, in the dirt, under a tree. You turn the tablet over. The clay is cracked, but not shattered. You wonder who hid this. A priest, an oracle, someone tired of Apollo's shifting truths. Here's the odd tidbit. Some ancient accounts whisper of oracles who buried their failed visions. Visions that didn't come true, or came true too loudly. They weren't burned. They were hidden. Because even gods don't like being second-guessed. You dig a little deeper. Another shard. A fragment with the words, "Shadowed crown." Whatever it means, it doesn't sound like something Apollo wanted on display. You imagine her again. The oracle with trembling hands, burying these tablets beneath moonlit leaves, glancing over her shoulder. Maybe she muttered, "Take that, Apollo," as she pressed the clay into the earth. The grove is silent, but it doesn't feel empty. The silence here isn't absence. It's presence. You can almost hear her voice still, half chant, half curse. A breath trapped in the branches. The scent of wet stone and resin thickens, and the tablet feels heavier in your hands, like it remembers. You set it down gently. The clink of clay sounds almost sacrilegious. You're tempted to keep going, to unearth more. But a twig snaps. You freeze. You look up. No one. Just olive branches trembling slightly, as if something just left. The grove watches you. Or maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe it just knows. You stare at the buried tablet for one last breath, then cover it again. Some things are too dangerous to carry. You rise. The prophecies stay with you anyway. Not the words, but the weight. They thrum beneath your ribs like a second heartbeat. This temple isn't a monument. It's a fracture. A place where even the gods' voices crack. Where priests smudge the lines and oracles defy their own visions. The moonlight tilts. Shadows stretch long across the grove. It's time to move. But as you step away, you feel it, the pull of buried truths, their silence louder than any hymn. You're slipping away from the sacred grove, those buried prophecies still echoing in your mind. A song you can't quite hum, a warning you're too far in to forget. Moonlight filters through the trees, guiding you back toward the temple's edge. But you veer off, drawn by instinct, or maybe by something older. A narrow path, overgrown and half swallowed by weeds, leads to a crumbling stone structure, that time, and Apollo seems to have abandoned. This isn't part of the main complex. It's an outbuilding, barely standing. Its roof has collapsed inward, vines coiling through shattered stone, like the earth is trying to reclaim it. You push through the tangle of growth into a small, shadowed courtyard. The air shifts, damp, metallic. It smells like wet stone, and something faintly like blood. In the center, a rough altar. Not polished marble. Just a stack of uneven stones, weathered and crude. Offerings lie scattered around it. Dried flowers, a broken loom shuttle, a rusted knife. These aren't for Apollo. They're too raw, too personal. More grief than glory. Historical records from the 6th century BCE mention secret sanctuaries hidden near major temples, refuges for the exiled, disgraced oracles, rebellious priests, worshippers who loved the gods in the wrong way. This place feels like one of them. Here's the odd tidbit. Some texts whisper that these outposts were not just sanctuaries, but meeting grounds for spiritual dissidents, sects that blended Apollo's worship with forbidden figures' necks. The Fates. Old. Dark names not welcomed in daylight. You scan the shadows. In one corner, a small clay lamp, still warm. Someone's been here. Recently. You kneel by the altar, and there it is. Carved into the stone, a spindle. Not Apollo's lyre. Not his laurel. A symbol sacred to the Fates. It's the kind of mark you'd expect scribbled behind a curtain, not carved into sacred stone. It's graffiti in a cathedral. A whispered no to the god of radiant order. You chuckle softly, picturing some exiled priest hunched here in the dark, muttering, "Take your laurel and shove it." The courtyard is silent. Not dead, but listening. You feel it in the hush of vines as they sway in the breeze. Like they're not just growing here. They're guarding something. You imagine the outcasts, gathered in this courtyard under a new moon, sharing their stories, their defiance, their grief. One of them might have left those acorns in the forgotten shrine. Another the black feather. Another the buried prophecy. You wonder if they're still around. Still watching. Still whispering to those who listen. You sit against the altar. It's stone cold against your back. The rusted knife gleams dully in the moonlight. The clay lamp still glows faintly. You're not just in a temple anymore. You're in a fracture of belief. A place where ritual gave way to resistance. Where worship was remade in the image of grief and fury. You let the silence settle over you. Let the air wrap itself around your limbs. It's easy to drift here. To imagine the hands that built this altar. Not in reverence, but in rebellion. You're in deep now. Deeper than scrolls and chants and divine contradiction. You're seated in a quiet revolution. where forgotten figures still leave offerings in the dark. The lamp's flame flickers again. Not dying, just signaling. There are more secrets ahead. This sanctuary, this haven for the defiant, has only just begun to speak. You linger in the crumbling sanctuary, the clay lamp flickering faintly in the corner, its glow barely pushing back the shadows in this refuge for the rejected. Just as you're about to slip away, voices ripple through the silence. Low, urgent, and desperate, coming from beyond the broken stone wall. You creep closer, heart pounding, and peer through a narrow gap. Moonlight reveals a figure in a priest's robe. But something's off. The robe's too short, the gestures too theatrical, like a bad actor in an ancient play. The figure speaks to a small crowd of weary pilgrims. Dust, streaked faces, hollow eyes, clutching worn cloaks and tired hopes. They promise Apollo's blessings for a handful of coins tossed into a clay bowl. This isn't a priest. It's an imposter. A fraud weaving lies like fine silk, caught red-handed in their own con. You're way out of your depth here, and let's be honest, you wouldn't last a day without stepping on some scammer's toes. The imposter's voice is smooth, slick with fake piety, spinning visions of bountiful harvests, divine favor, and celestial mercy. The pilgrims hang on every word, dropping coins with trembling hands, their faith a currency to be spent. Historical records from the 6th century BCE tell of charlatans like this, infiltrating Apollo's temples in times of drought, war, and fear, pocketing offerings while dodging the priest's wrath. You watch this one's hands, waving too wide, flourishing like a tragedian on stage. You stifle a laugh. Overacting hasn't changed in 500 years. Here's the kicker: the imposter slips, mentioning a golden lyre Apollo supposedly sent in a vision. You know the myths. Apollo's lyre is silver, the same one in the story of Marsyas. A silver instrument, not gold. The pilgrims don't catch it, but you do, and you bite back the urge to whisper from the shadows. Nice try, buddy. The crowd disperses, coins clinking as the imposter scoops them up, grinning like they just won at ancient dice. You're lulled by their retreating footsteps, the sanctuary swallowing. Silence once again. You think back to the sacred grove's whispers of no God, the buried prophecies, the outcast's altar, each one a crack in Apollo's perfect facade. This imposter, just another crack, bolder, brassier. You imagine them rehearsing, practicing that fake tremble, that slick smile, in some dingy hut before stepping out to con the faithful. Almost admirable, in a shady sort of way. Like a street performer who knows they're terrible, but keeps the act going. You slip back into the shadows of the sanctuary. The lamps glow dimming as you move toward the path. The imposter is gone, but their bowl of coins still glints in the moonlight, left behind like a taunt. You're tempted to snatch a coin, just to feel like part of the con. But you don't. The temple's secrets pile up, each one tugging you deeper into its web. The night grows heavier, the air thick with lies and defiance. You drift, wondering what other frauds or truths hide beneath this temple's moonlit veil. You're slipping away from the sanctuary, the imposter's clinking coins and theatrical lies still echoing in your mind as you weave back toward the main temple. Moonlight has faded, the air cooling around you, and soon you arrive at the edge of a wide, open courtyard you hadn't noticed before. It's overgrown, stones cracked, weeds pushing through the cracks. But you feel it, this place was once alive, with laughter, music, and the hum of festivals for Apollo. Now, it's silent, a stage abandoned mid-performance. You're treading on hallowed memories, and honestly, you wouldn't survive a day in this temple without someone catching you trespassing on sacred ground. You wander deeper, sandals brushing against tiles, etched with faded sun motifs. You can almost see the crowds. Worshippers dancing, priests pouring wine, musicians strumming lyres under Apollo's watchful gaze. Historical records from the 6th century BCE describe grand festivals, the Pythian Games, where music and poetry rivaled athletic feats. But this courtyard feels older, tied to smaller, local rites that didn't make the history books. You spot a broken altar, its base littered with shattered cups, as if the party ended abruptly. You start to imagine the scene. Tables laden with bread and figs, voices raised in song, maybe even a cheeky toast to Apollo's less sunny side. Here's the odd tidbit. Some sources suggest these minor festivals included unorthodox rituals, dances mimicking animals, offerings to lesser deities slipped in alongside Apollo's. Historians still argue, were these playful traditions or subtle acts of defiance against the god's strict order? You notice a small stone, half buried in the dirt, carved with a leaping goat. Not Apollo's laurel or lyre, but a nod to Pan, the wild goat, god who'd probably crash Apollo's party, just for fun. You grin, imagining a priest sneaking this in, muttering, "Lighten up, Apollo," as they joined the dance. You sit on the altar's edge, the cool stone grounding you as the courtyard's silence wraps around you. You're lulled by the faint rustle of weeds in the breeze, picturing the festival's energy. Children laughing, someone spilling wine, a lyre player fumbling a note. It's a warm, human scene. Not the stiff piety of dawn rituals or the oracle's doubts. You're tempted to hum a tune, something to bring the courtyard back to life. But you don't. The ghosts of those festivals feel close, like they're watching. And you don't want to disturb them. You think back to the myrtle leaf, the green flashed fire, the imposter's scam. Each a thread in this temple's tapestry of quiet rebellion. Moonlight shifts, casting long shadows, that dance like festival goers once did. You're drifting now, the courtyard's stillness pulling you towards sleep. But the carved goat keeps you anchored, a reminder of the joy and defiance that once filled this place. You stand, brushing off your hands, and feel the pull to move on, to find what other echoes of this temple's past linger in its shadows. The night is deep, and the courtyard's memories whisper, urging you to uncover more of Apollo's forgotten stories. You're retreating from the ghostly courtyard, the fading echoes of forgotten festivals dissolving into the temple's shadowed corridors. The air grows cooler, thick with the scent of wax and ancient stone. Ahead, a faint murmur draws you. A small chamber tucked behind the main altar. You peer inside, heart pounding. A circle of priests, 5 or 6. Their robes shimmering softly in lamplight, locked in a tense, hushed debate. They argue Apollo's will, voices sharp but low, as if fearing the god himself might overhear. You're eavesdropping on sacred ground again. And believe me, you wouldn't last a day without someone catching your shadow here. One priest, older, with a crooked nose, jabs a finger at a scroll, insisting Apollo demands a new festival. Another, younger, twitchy, nervous, counters it's a misread oracle. No such command was given. Snippets drift to you. Too many offerings. He's testing us. The laurel was wrong. It's a divine book club gone off the rails. Historical records from the 5th century BCE show Apollo's priests often clashed. Wrestling oracles, especially in crises. Feeding drought. Stricken towns forced hard choices. But this debate feels more personal. A battle beyond mere scrolls and rituals. Here's the odd tidbit. Some sources claim priests fabricated minor prophecies, passing them off as Apollo's words to stave off chaos. Historians still argue deceit or desperate pragmatism. You watch as the young priest pulls a clay tablet, pointing to shadows rising. He reads it as a warning, not a command. The older priest scoffs, muttering, "Youth and their dramatics." You stifle a chuckle. Sounds like every family argument you've ever heard. You're tempted to whisper, "Flip a coin." But stay hidden, the lamplight flickering across your face. The chamber's air thickens, priests' voices blending into a low, hypnotic hum, circling the same tangled arguments, like dogs chasing tails. You think back to contradictory scrolls, the imposter's scam, buried prophecies, all signs, Apollo's order phrase at the edges. These priests aren't rebels like the outcasts, but their doubt is equally dangerous. You imagine them here, night after night, trying to decode Apollo's whims, tempers fraying as the lamp burns low. It's exhausting just watching. Your eyelids droop, the debate's cadence pulling you towards sleep. Suddenly, one priest slams his hand on the table, startling you awake. He speaks in riddles. He hisses. You silently nod, thinking of the oracle's doubts, the grove's whispers. The temple's secrets pile higher. Each debate another crack in Apollo's perfect facade. You're tempted to stay, to hear who wins. But the lamp's flicker weakens. Voices drop lower. Like surrendering. You slip out, the tension lingering like a half-remembered dream, urging you deeper into the temple's shadows to find what other arguments or truths hide in its ancient walls. You slip away from the priest's clamor, their voices fading into the temple's dim corridors. The air thickens, cold stone and distant incense coil around you, drawing you toward a narrow, spiral staircase, worn smooth by centuries of secret feet. You shouldn't be here. This place isn't for casual wanderers, and you'd never last a day without someone catching you snooping where the gods' shadows linger. But the pull is irresistible. Step by step, the air grows cooler until you reach a low chamber heavy with secrets, too old for Apollo's light. The walls, damp and etched with faint carvings, snakes, pomegranates, symbols of Hades and Persephone, not the sun god. A single torch flickers, casting long, eerie shadows. Before you, a low altar, strewn with offerings. Wilted asphodel, a cracked bowl of barley mixed with ash. These aren't Apollo's gifts. They belong to the underworld, a quiet nod to the gods below. Historical records from the 6th century BCE mention rare rites. Apollo's temples hosting dual worship. Solar glory entangled with chthonic darkness, especially where old beliefs refuse to die. This chamber is a hidden bridge, where light meets shadow. Here's the odd twist. Some texts whisper that Apollo's priests performed rites for underworld deities, calming a grumpy neighbor rather than risking wrath. Historians debate. Was it syncretism or simple fear that Hades might steal Apollo's spotlight? You spot a small clay figure of a dog, Cerberus, perhaps tucked in a corner. Someone has been risking everything down here, honoring the underworld in Apollo's own house. You grin, imagining the mutter. Sorry, Apollo, just hedging my bets. Bold, like sneaking a burger into a vegan cafe. You kneel by the altar, torchlight warm on your face, feeling the chamber's stillness wrap tight. The shadows dance like ghosts, reenacting secret rites. You picture a lone priestess, maybe one of the outcasts, slipping down at midnight to leave these offerings. The faint scent of asphodel and ash lulls you. Your eyelids grow heavy. You think back. The myrtle leaf, the green flashed fire, the priest's endless debates. Each a thread in this temple's tangled web of defiance. This chamber is the deepest thread yet, tying Apollo's bright order to the underworld's chaos. A faint drip echoes, water seeping slow, and you snap awake, heart pounding. You're tempted to touch the dog figure to feel its weight, but you don't. Messing with Hades' realm, that's asking for eternal overtime. The air presses thick, urging you to leave, to climb back to Apollo's light. But the forbidden rites linger, their whispers echoing, like a lullaby from below, pulling you deeper into the temple's shadows to uncover the final secrets hidden in its moonlit veil. You climb from the underworld's grip, the damp chamber and ghostly offerings fading behind you. Emerging into the temple's quiet corridors, where the first pale brush strokes of dawn color the sky, you wander toward the main courtyard, once alive with ritual, fire, and worship. Now cracked, stones lie silent beneath fading stars. The temple feels emptier, its rites, dawn fires, forbidden gifts, whispered doubts, slipping away like a dream you struggle to hold. Here, where Apollo's light once ruled, you feel the weight of a fading legacy pressing down. You've traced sacred secrets all night, and you know you wouldn't last a day without someone noticing your curious footprints scattered like a trail of quiet defiance. The altar stands cold, dusted with ash. Your fingers trace grooves carved by countless offerings. Historical records from the 5th century BCE tell of places like this. Smaller temples abandoned as grand sanctuaries rose, their stories buried beneath the relentless weight of time. You picture the figures you met, the oracle's quiet doubts, the rogue priest's black feather, the moonlit worshippers, all fighting to keep belief alive as Apollo's grip slipped loose. Here's the strange truth. Some say these fading temples were left intact, deliberately. A ritual of abandonment, a nod to the gods' own impermanence. Historians debate, was it reverence or neglect? Your gaze falls on a brittle laurel, leaf resting on the altar. A final goodbye from Apollo's once burning flame. You smile softly. Even the god of light couldn't keep this place alive forever. It humbles you, like hearing your favorite cafe is closing for good. You resist the urge to pocket the leaf, letting it lie, a fragile relic slipping slowly into earth. The air softens, dawn's gentle glow warming the stones. You sit, leaning back against the altar, letting silence wrap around you like a whispered lullaby. The myrtle leaves, the green flashed fires, the buried prophecies, they feel like echoes of a world that refused to bow fully to Apollo's order. The distant chirp of waking birds, the steady rhythm of your breath, pull you toward peace, toward sleep. This temple's legacy isn't in grand ceremony, but in its cracks, in the small, defiant acts that kept it human. You close your eyes, the night's weight settling deep, and feel the temple fading, its stories softening into whispers. The courtyard grows quiet, stars dimming as dawn breaks closer. You rest on cold stones, their stories sinking into gentle hush. Each secret you've uncovered, the offerings, the doubts, the underworld's echoes, is a thread in a tapestry, fraying yet beautiful. The air carries the faint scent of laurel and earth, and you drift, breath slowing to match the world's pulse. This temple, once alive with chants and rebellion, slips into silence, but does not vanish. It lingers within you, a memory of light and shadow, gods and rebels who dared to question. Let dawn come, let stones rest. You're safe here, wrapped in the temple's last whispers, carried gently into sleep.